This is just some experience I've picked up over the last 14 years, my involvement on digital radio, and I suppose this is some do's and don'ts that might stand you in some good stead as a multiplex operator. And I'll start with a health warning. Of course, this is just my opinion. You might think I'm totally wrong, or there may be a very good editorial reason for doing something in a particular way. But nevertheless, I'll go through some examples of what something you may do as a Mux operator that has an effect on the listener. So Abdallah did a great talk about Arabic characters. Once upon a time, we were going to be carrying RTE on digital radio. And I had a bit of an experiment to see if we could broadcast the accented E. And as you can see on these receivers I'm showing, you can indeed display an accented E, which is brilliant. Or so I thought, until I come across the radio with a starburst display. I don't know how well you can see that particular image there, but you can see it hasn't replaced the accented E with an E. It's just put in an underscore. So yes. You know, while there are indeed receivers out there that support special characters, or maybe not special isn't the right word, but unusual or rare characters in the English alphabet, it is always worth checking first and deciding, do you want to be right or do you want to be compatible? A common one that I see with stations that have, you know, dynamic DLS, DLS being the dynamic label segment scrolling text. Often these are sourced from text files, and as you can see in this example here, you can see that at the end of the message are free carriage returns, and this is how my kitchen radio has decided to display them. On some radios you don't see the carriage returns at all, but I suppose what you want to do is check your text files to make sure you're broadcasting exactly what you want. One of the characters that's really surprised me is actually the percentage symbol. That seems to be supported on quite a number of radios. On the right hand side, hopefully you can see on one of my test channels there, I've just had a bit of a muck around actually, just inputting different characters and seeing how they come out there. So that is something you may want to do just to discreetly practice or check first to see if a character is compatible. And with DAB, unlike with, in some cases, FM, on DAB, an underscore really is an underscore. Who remembers this one from 2019, Scala Radio on the Sound Digital Multiplex? Someone thought it was a good idea to put an underscore in the middle of the name. And lo and behold, an underscore is what the radio is displayed. And then to make matters worse, 3 days later, someone realised that mistake and changed it. Or like I say, it might have been an editorial decision, who knows. But then they put 2 leading spaces at the start of the name, I presume in an attempt to censor the name on the radio. And if you look at my radio on the left here, you can see that Scala is not with the S stations. It's actually been dumped at the end of the station list. And if we look at this pure radio here, it's not at the start or at the end of the list. It's between the stations that start with the numbers and absolute 80s there. So that's something to be aware of. Of course, that was corrected a few days later. One thing that you might want to consider as well is, just go back a slide there, I've been a bit trigger happy with my mouse there. See, that's how easy it is to make a mistake. Right, so here we can see greatest hits radio there, and with the 16 characters you get on the long name, there's 3 different versions. You know, there's differences in news, adverts, that kind of thing, programs. And on a 16 characters, it's pretty easy to differentiate between them. However, on an 8 character display, less so. I took a photo, my wife was driving, it's all legal. We were driving along the A34 near Newbury, and the car radio picked up 5 stations called Greatest Hits. And it was not obvious which one was which. And you might think, well, it's all the same programs, does it matter? It does matter if you can't, if it's a very weak signal or one that you can't tune into. Again, that may be an editorial decision, but it's just something to be aware of in terms of listener experience. And you see Global, what they've done here with Heart is actually they do use 2 digits just to denote the area. So there's a little bit more obvious which one is the Hampshire Heart and which one is the Sussex Heart. And then this one here, again, is a similar kind of example here with Hits Radio. So I've got some local ones, and this is my car radio, which is good. However, there's 2 Hits Radio UKs. One of them is on a very weak multiplex, which you'll see very shortly. I can't receive a signal on. It's actually the other one. And I suppose the question you have to consider is, will your listener be that patient or even, dare I say, clued up to know that there is another one that they can check out? Here's a fun one. This is trying to find TalkSport on my car radio. So you think TalkSport alphabetically would be further up the list, but no, there's no TalkSport, TalkSport 2, or Talk Radio. And why is that? Well, it's because this particular car radio decides to sort stations by the Unicode character order. So because of that, a lowercase t has a larger value than a capital T. So TalkSport actually is there, but it's not where I'm expecting it to be. One of my stations in Portsmouth, The Flash, they decided to change their name not long after launch. So there it is, how it originally launched on the left, and then on the right is the they chopped the off because they found their listeners were looking for sorry, not looking for they were looking for Flash, and so they were getting muddled up basically. So that's why they dropped the from their station name. SIDs, service identifiers, remember that might come in useful later on. Sometimes it's necessary to change them for one reason or another, rather than turning off the old SID and turning on a new one and leaving the listener with a dead station and a working station. One of the things you can do is you can point both SIDs to an audio stream, and then you can manage the mitigation. You can see what I've done here with Chris Country. I've just labelled one retune, run that for a month, and then turned it off. So the listener just has one version of Chris Country in their station list. Another thing with SIDs is that how radios are designed to work is where you have two multiplexes, and the service, in this case, Smooth Country, has the same SID, in this case CDE9. There's only one instance in the station list. Now that is relevant to the next example. So a video it will play very shortly from Paddy O'Connell, and he is trying to find the newly launched Times Radio on his station list, and he can't find Times Radio. So can we play that video, please? So as you see here, he's scrolling through his station list, and you'd expect Times Radio to be there, and it's not there. But so he's rescanned his radio, it's not there. So where on earth is Times Radio, or why is Times Radio not in that station list? So we'll go on to the next slide now. So what you can see here, I did a bit of detective work here. Times Radio, and sorry, if someone can, is it possible to go to slide 19? So what basically happened with Times Radio was that it was given the same SID as a service on another multiplex. And so Paddy O'Connell's radio, like many people living in London, was displaying absolute naughties, but it was not displaying Times Radio. And the reason for that was because absolute naughties incorrectly had the wrong SID input into the multiplex it was broadcast on. So changing that then basically brought it back. So you just want to be very careful. And also, if you were paying attention to Paddy's clip there, you would have noticed that there were lots of orphan stations on there. So you might want to be careful about things like reusing SIDs and, like I say, managing stations, because on that instance, there was two versions of the hits on his station list, and no doubt there was a hits radio somewhere else. So that's something to be mindful of. One way you can mitigate against these things is by having a little test rig. Using that, you can use open digital radio. It doesn't cost a lot of money. You can have a little test rig. You can practice these things, and then obviously you protect yourself from them having to make a change that may cause even more disruption when it's time for you to launch. So I'll just wrap up now. There's just one other thing that I want to touch on. I can't see the team chat here, so someone's forwarding on for me. That's brilliant. So if someone can go on to slide 21 for me, that'd be great. Thank you. So I just want to talk about slideshow for a minute. So slideshow is quite common these days with car radios, especially even portable radios. I mean, you can buy a radio with slideshow from Argos for £50 now. There are more stations doing slides, especially on small scale DAB. One of the things that I've found in terms of accessibility and making them load on radios is although the DAB spec says The slide can be anything you want as long as it's no wider than 320 pixels or no taller than 240 pixels. Some radios decide to not display them properly or stretch them. So thankfully on this slide here, all of the slides are good, which is good. So anyway, here's a picture of the test rig that I was telling you about. So again, yeah, open digital radio makes it really easy to do, and you can practice from the safety of your garage before doing anything in the wild. So that's really good. So thank you very much, guys, and I hope that was useful, and I'll catch up with you later on.